welcome to our spring speaker series. I'm Nick Murray. I'm with the Wikileaks Springs. Before we get started, I need to acknowledge the Florida Humanities Council support. This is a partnership between the Florida Humanities and the Friends of Wikileaks Springs State Park. Funding for this program was provided by the Florida Humanities and sponsored in part by the State of Florida Department of State, Division of Arts and Culture, and Florida Council on Art and Culture. Learn more about Florida Humanities, visit floridahumanities.org. Tonight we have Diane Roberts here. Diane, come on. I'm going to make my intro slightly more reduced, but look at, she's a longtime Florida resident and actually Tallahassee, North Florida resident. She's an FSU professor. She knows the Seminoles, she knows McCullough County, and she's here to talk about her book today. She's an author that has other books out there that you all should check out for sure. Okay? With no further ado.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a kind of echoey room, but that's all right. We'll manage. And I hope for all of you online, let us know if you have any trouble hearing me. And seeing me is not that exciting, especially for the world's largest lecture. You know, like Alice Wonderland. So I'm not going to harangue you too much. I'm going to read you a little bit from Dream State. That's Wikileaks Springs related, and then talk a little bit about the state of and future of the Springs. But before I start, I'll preface this by saying that my father's family is from the county of Smith Creek, not right here. This was considered a very exotic place if you lived here. Well, they lived in Soptoppy, Erin, Smith Creek, Sanford, sort of depending on what was going on. And they were Robertses and Bosses and Taps and Browards and a whole lot of ones, Caraways. Geez, I don't even remember. There's just, I'm related to an awful lot of people in the county. And a lot of the Roberts, you get the Robertses. There are a lot of Robertses that look like Robertses. Many of them I liked. Then there were the other ones. My mother's family came from West Florida, but the Robertses through the Tuckers, another big kin family, go back to Browards in West Florida, East Florida, what was Spanish East Florida. The first one of them came over in 1799. I only say this, I mean, they were giving Florida away, right? Seriously, the King of Spain was giving it away. All you had to do was say you were loyal to the King of Spain. He's like, right, how much you want? Because the Spanish never made any money off Florida. It was just useless. I mean, in Peru, they're gold and emeralds and good stuff. And in Florida, it's like, what do we do with this place? But, you know, you give it away to people like my ancestor, Francois Brouard, who was from Normandy in France and married a Scottish woman and got him a bunch of land in what's now Nassau County, Nassau and North Duval. And in the sort of first 15 years or so of the 19th century, he saw which way the wind was blowing and anglicized his name to Broward. So his granddaughter, Jane Broward, married a Tucker. And for reasons none of us know, They came over here, which was an odd thing to do because there wasn't a whole lot of here. I imagine, my mother always said, my mother being a Gilbert from West Florida, said that Rufus Tucker undoubtedly did something wrong. My mother found my father's family interesting, but sometimes a bit much. But they were exceedingly colorful, really colorful. My grandfather, whose name was Edgar Lafayette Roberts, we are not related to Marquis Lafayette. That was a name they liked. But, you know, he would tell these stories about, usually involved an amorphous group of people called them old boys, who were down in the swamp. And one set of them old boys did things like have a bear chained to the porch, you know, as you do. So some of the stories are surreal, but then Florida is surreal. So I'll read you just a little bit from Dream State, which is by now an old book. It's like an old book. And some of the things that I say in here, maybe some of the statistics are no longer correct. We'll give it a try. The story I was told, the story all Florida school children were once told, was that Juan Ponce de Leon came to Florida to find the fountain of youth. Maybe Spain was full of geriatric conquistadores looking for a place to unfreeze their old bones and heat up their blood once more. This made sense to us. Florida was full of old people wearing shorts in fierce gumball colors, old people on golf carts, old people with burnt sienna tans and parasol cocktails and $50 manicures, all trying to feel less old. It was as if Florida were some kind of American reward. Live most of your life in a place where you have to work in the cold, walk on ice and shovel snow, then go south where you can play like a child in the sun. Nobody now buys the miraculous waters idea. Juan Ponce's obsessively detailed royal charter, his asiento, enumerates gold, territory, germs, gems even, the light isn't good in here, sorry, souls to be converted to the true faith, but nothing about rejuvenation. In 1511, Pietro Martire d'Anghiera, who's also called Peter Martyr in some sources, he was a priest at the court of the King of Aragon. He drew this ghostly map of a place called Isla de Bimini Parte, which lies due north of Cuba, according to his map. They knew Cuba. Cuba was civilized, you know, comparatively. But it's just a fractured outline. It's just a coastline. You can't really tell much about it. It's very sort of spooky. It trails off into nothingness. It's sort of phantasmagorical. And there was some rumor about Bimini and eternal youth, maybe brought back from one of Columbus's voyages, but you don't want to trust him because his sailors saw manatees and thought they were mermaids. You know, not a good source. But this fountain business didn't get attached to Juan Ponce de Leon until 100 years after his voyage to Florida. His biographer actually told this story for some reason. And it was all about how these poor old geezers would turn into adolescents again. And there is a Bimini, a real Bimini in the Bahamas, and it's this little itty bitty comma of land. And it gamely tries to wrap itself in this legend. You know, they do try. In Bimini, they'll show you some ruins of Atlantis too, along with Juan Ponce's Fountain of Youth. Of course, in Florida, fiction thrives like kudzu. And sorry, Bimini, but we own the Fountain of Youth. We've got 3 or 4 fountains of youth. One burbles up in St. Augustine, just north of the Shrine of Our Lady of Valenche. The last time I was there, it cost $5 to get in. The water is covered by a hut with murals depicting, this place cracks me up, depicting Juan Ponce as a white-haired Don Quixote. Water tastes of sulfur and it smells like a basket full of rotten Easter eggs. Around the spring lie the graves of 16th and 17th century native people, many of whom died from the smallpox and the measles given them by the good Christians come to save them. There's a fountain of youth in Volusia County, too, not far from the Daytona International Speedway, which is convenient. When John James Audubon visited in 1831, the place was called Spring Garden. Then it became, because we're clever in Florida, Garden Springs. In the 1880s, the residents took a shot at calling it DeSoto, that's with an A on the end. But the post office told them Florida already had one of those. So they went for De Leon Springs. And then there's, we're not going to pronounce it the way the explorer would have, Ponce de Leon, a tiny, tiny hamlet that happens to have a spring in common with 319 other places in Florida. They pulled the same move. The place is 200 miles west of the Atlantic, but why we're in a good founding myth with geographical and historical facts. Maybe Juan Ponce got farther into Florida than he's given credit for. Maybe Jesus visited England too. Just like the monks at Glastonbury and the poet William Blake said. And maybe aliens visited New Mexico, just like the X-Files said. Any explorer worth a damn travels onward, westward, just like Odysseus. West is the direction of magic, toward the sunset, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, beyond the edge of the world. Out there you could find the Hesperides, Atlantis, Avalon. You could spread your faith, your language, your DNA, your animals, your laws, your viruses to new worlds, or worlds new to you. Out there you could find silks, jewels, tobacco, sugar, cotton, spices, space. You could build an empire. The Spanish always get credit for being the first Europeans to see Florida. They may not have been. Now, some of these stories are sounder than others, but the Welsh still tell how Prince Madoc in the 12th century sailed around the Keys up into the Gulf of Mexico. One of my great uncles said that the first Robertses and Tuckers met blue-eyed, red-haired, Welsh-speaking Indians. I think that's highly unlikely. But this one's not so much. Out there, or, the Vikings, who may have got blown off course for Vinland and ended up camping on Amelia Island. And then there's St. Brendan, who was Irish. He set sail in an oak boat sometime in the 6th century, heading southwest. And then what he called the Western Sea, the Saint and his 14 companions, saw, rather oddly, a tall crystal column rising out of the sky. Went around the island where Judas, reprieved from damnation only on Sundays though, took the form of a man-shaped cloud. But then they came upon a warm land with water so clear you could see the skeletons of ancient beasts far down on the white bed. Just like the mastodon bones at the bottom of Wakulla Springs. Maybe it was Wakulla Springs. Brendan could have wandered into the Gulf and got entangled in the lattice of rivers and creeks until one dead ended in a round pool of boiling cold water, iridescent blues, greens, and violets, deep as hell and beautiful as paradise, silvery bones resting on far down sand. Or maybe Juan Ponce de Leon was the first Christian to look into the depths and declare it a miracle. Old guidebooks thought so. My great-uncle Malcolm thought so. Wakulla's waters, 400,000 gallons a minute, sharp as winter twilight, push up through a great reservoir of accumulated rain below the clay, down the limestone chambers that emerged when Florida rose from the sea for the last time a million years ago. Wakulla is very deep. No one's entirely sure how deep. The visible end of the whole underworld of rivers and caves, the subterranean mansions of the earth. No one has ever found the exact source. You take it on faith, this wonder of the swamp. And I think the springs, no matter what the science of the springs is, and we know a lot more. This book came out in 2004. We know more about the springs now than we did, but it's still miraculous, isn't it? It's still, I never, ever get over it. It is new to me every time. I just brought some British friends down here and made them go on the Jungle Cruise. I'm making everybody go on the Jungle Cruise because it's just the best thing in the world. And I make them come in here and look at the lodge and tell them what Pecky Cypress is and make them stand very respectfully in front of old Joe. Poor old Joe, still an unsolved murder. There should be a cold case show about old Joe. But I live in fear that one of my kinfolk killed him. The sort of thing some of them would do, you know. But I don't know, I often think that a lot of Floridians, the ones that have been around a lot, aren't that scared of alligators. When I was working at the St. Petersburg Times, as it was then, of course it is now, the Tampa Bay Times, but I had a colleague, a great columnist named Bill Maxwell, who had grown up on a cracker farm, and he sort of took a dim view. He was a professor, he went to the University of Chicago, he was very smart. But every spring, there'd be two stories that always happened. And we'd sit there in editorial board meetings and somebody would say, well, the first Cadillac went through the first plate glass window. And we'd all nod like, yep, Snowbird's back. And then there'd be another day where the story was gator in somebody's swimming pool. Yeah. And Bill would say, gator was there first. Which is true. I mean, the alligator's like, I can't help you building stuff in my place. This is my place. So, you know. Which kind of brings me to the ranty part of what I want to tell y'all, which is that I am very, very worried. And I know you are too. You care about the springs. Anybody with half a brain cares about the springs. But I think a lot of Florida's government is running on way less than half a brain. With all due respect, and a lot of respect to the Florida Humanities Council, which does a great deal of good work. Please don't tell the rest of Florida government, or they'll shut it down or something. But I worry constantly, and this goes for local right on up to the top. I just couldn't believe that some geniuses thought it would be a really good idea to have a gigantic gas station. And I'm like, do y'all not get what this does? I mean, 5th grade ecology, we learned, first of all, we learned very importantly, this is something Governor Napoleon Bonaparte Broward actually said, and it's hard to argue with, water runs downhill, in case you're wondering. Well, yeah, and water also goes through the holes in this mysterious object called the karst plane, you know, which, as I say, 5th grade ecology, we learned that there were all these holes, so if we dumped a lot of noisome crap on the ground wherever we lived in Leon County, it was coming downhill. Now, why it is that entities from the city of Tallahassee that actually commissioned a $500,000 study to figure out what 5th graders could have told them, which, yeah, you know, it's gonna get in the springs. Y'all remember that one where they put some dye down and they were waiting and we're all going, what do you think's gonna happen, geniuses? And sure enough, great revelation. Everything that we put in the groundwater one way or another affects the aquifer. You throw it on the ground, you're gonna drink it in some form later. This is true all over the state of Florida. We're lucky we're still above sea level at all because limestone is very, very porous stuff. And
y'all also know that one of the really clever, not ideas to stop sea level rise in South Florida is to build big old walls. You know, and you want to go, it goes underneath. Y'all know that water goes underneath. And salt water's already in the municipal wells of South Florida. And there are a lot of very angry people that nothing is being done. But much as I want South Florida to succeed and survive, a lot of it won't at our current rate of ocean level rise and temperature rise. But I am hoping we're still high up enough that we might save ourselves a bit, and at least to save, as long as we can, the most precious thing around here, not just Wakulla Springs, but all of our springs, which are all imperiled, all of them, from Nestle, whatever it calls itself in its disguise as a water company, sucking water out of Jenny Springs to runoff from everything being development, leaching septic tanks, and our favorites, big cow. Dairy farms. I mean, not the cow's fault. Cow gotta poop. Cow poops. Stuff goes into groundwater. You know, nutrients. I mean, it's fertilizer. We know this. We fought so hard in this area to save, or at least help, Wakulla Springs. And the rest of Florida seems, or at least the people in power seem to have no trouble dumping the equivalent of a great deal of manure into our waters hourly. And we don't regulate it because we don't tell big cow or big sugar or big developer or, you know, big anybody what to do. But if you do, it might hurt their feelings, and if their feelings are hurt, they won't give to your campaign. We can't have that. So we're going to pretend it's all fine, and we're going to build walls. And we're going to tell rich people that they'll be okay because there's a wall. One of my favorite ideas that is just so stupid. And water's going to do what water does. The same principle applies to, remember the county spent, Leon County spent a lot of money saving, theoretically, Lake Jackson. Along comes this developer who's going to build a huge, he has built it, this horse is out of the barn, huge development on US 27 North. And he said it'd be okay because he'll build a berm. You know, nothing will get into Lake Jackson. And you just go, no, do you not get how the ground works? I mean, I sometimes think, am I just wrong and water just sits there going la 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 and doesn't go anywhere else? No, I'm not. Poor Lake Jackson, which is a big old sinkhole. And some of the real geniuses in Tallahassee government said, let's plug it. Okay, why don't you just pave it and make it a swimming pool? You know, we have ecosystems that depend on things working. And things left alone work. Like Jackson drains. The springs, if they got a little head start on the nutrients, would fix themselves. If we didn't build bad, dirty things in stupid places, like a wastewater treatment plant in the southern end of Leon County, where there's, you know, nothing really to filter stuff, whereas the northern part of the county, which is clay soil, nice filter clay soil, very helpful, cleans things up a bit, not entirely, but it's a lot better than, say, a lot of sand and karst plain. But an unhappy coincidence, or not, is that, well, if you think about who lives in northern Leon County versus who lives in southern Leon County, it's a lot more money in the northern county. I bet y'all are detecting a pattern here. But we do this over and over as if somehow the next time it'll be fine. So a parcel of land at the corner in Tallahassee again of Miccosukee and Blairstone is being rezoned to build some ridiculous, I think it's this gas station stroke, what 7-Elevens keep calling themselves different things. I think this one is called perversely Tom Thumb. Beats me. Next up on the City of Tallahassee docket, and this all really matters for Wakulla County because all this drains into the Wakulla Basin. All of it does. It's all going into Lake Munson, it's going to all the sloughs, underground rivers, all of it here. But the English forest, English is the name of the people that own it. It's, I think, 700 something acres in the southeast, geography. That's an old hardwood forest. It's actually great. It's the sort of forest that got the attention for the Center for Biological Diversity. Those people are not amateurs. Their assessment of this land is that it is very biologically rich in all kinds of ways: trees, plants, insects, birds, crawly things, furry things, you name it. And there's a developer that wants to build lots and lots of high density and is saying, no, it'll be fine. We'll make it like you like it. It'll be still full of trees. Have y'all heard that one before? We won't touch the trees. We won't touch the trees. That will run off straight down here and straight everywhere else that you don't want it to. And I'm just astonished that we have in Tallahassee, and again, to some extent in Wakulla County, people who cannot figure out that there is not only a virtue in being environmentally conscious and responsible, there's money in it. There's money in it. People come to Florida not because of strip malls, not because of gas stations. It's not why anybody comes to Florida, except for maybe some very stupid people, and we don't care about them. People come to Florida because some of it looks like this. Sometimes it looks like this. And sometimes it looks so beautiful you can hardly believe it. And this is money. Trees, money. The environment is money. Springs are money. Clean water is money. The Indian River Lagoon is in the state of biological collapse. We're killing manatees. Well, okay, we gave them a whole lot of romaine lettuce. So salad fixes everything. Except, the causes of why the manatees are starving to death, not addressed. Toxic algal bloom, not addressed, because apparently we're back to not being able to say climate change or global warming or whatever it was, because we don't care about that. We just, don't want your children to read a woke book. Because if they read a woke book, or if they hear the word gay, they might get woke, turn gay. That's how it works, as I understand. I need to try it on my students at FSU and go, y'all, gay, 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 gay. Anybody turn gay? Shoot. Anyway, this is the sort of level of student we're at. We're not actually addressing our real environmental problems. And, the thing I can tell all y'all to do, and I'm pretty sure you already do it, this is preaching to the choir, vote. Make people you know vote. I don't care if you have to, collar. If you have to trick them, drug them polling place, safest place to vote now that, you know, we're not really allowed to vote most of the ways we were allowed to vote, because God forbid the wrong people, that is people like you and me, vote. But I don't know what else we do. I don't know what we do in Tallahassee about this. I know that it's actually can be a really good thing that people are moving into Wakulla County, even though I snarl about it. Because of course, like anybody, I want it to look just like it always looked to me. Thank God the swamp that belongs to me, very small bit of swamp, maybe 40 acres of swamp in Smith Creek, is gonna look just like it always looked, because the Roberts land is surrounded by the National Forest. And the Robertses, I mean, this land is so not worth actual money. I mean, I think the taxes that we pay on it are $48 a year or something, not worth money. But that's not why we care about it. We care about it because it is itself. It looks after itself. We can love it, or at least we can love it until June when the snakes wake up, and then I ain't loving it again until November. You know, me and cottonmouths do not get along. So we can try to get the people who have the power to do the right thing, and if they don't, we need to put some different people in power. I despair. I mean, Tallahassee, we're supposed to be so caring about our trees and our environment, etc. And I've never seen such a rush to destroy, you know, for $15 an hour Amazon jobs where you're treated like a slave. And we're supposed to be thrilled to bits about that? I'm a little puzzled. Nobody has talked about the environmental impact of those giant Amazon footprints. You know, the runoff situation alone must be a nightmare. But, you know, we don't talk about that. So here we are at one of the most beautiful places on this planet. And thank goodness for the Friends of the Springs, because I know you fight like, you know, enraged mink for this place. If you've ever seen an enraged mink, you would stay out of its way. It's fierce. And what I'm going to do is shut up so that people can ask me questions. And I won't really shut up. I'll just quit haranguing you and let people ask questions, because y'all undoubtedly have far more interesting things to say than I do. But I appreciate you paying attention to my rant. And just know that there are allies out there. Lots of allies. Lots of writers who care. Lots and lots of us. And we do our damnedest, sometimes with words and a little bit with money, just like you do. And I still feel like that kid in church who's been called up to read from the Bible and can't quite reach it. That's okay. Anybody's got a question, it doesn't have to be like a big question, it can be just, you know, you can just say something. Yeah?
I know it was mentioned in the write-up about Wikileaks Springs. I was from Tampa Bay area, St. Petersburg, Florida, born and raised. So anyway, that was more in my territory, and of course this reminds me of it in a lot of ways. The river, you have a cruise down the river, I don't know if they still have it. But what's your knowledge about Wikileaks Springs?
Questions about Wikileaks Springs, which is another, for anybody that hasn't been, please go. The City of Mermaids. I love Wikileaks Springs, and it actually started here at Wakulla Springs, which sounds weird. I don't mean the springs started here, I mean the mermaids did. The guy whose name is escaping me at this moment, but one of you will probably know his name. Thank you, Newt Perry, who was a frogman in the Navy. Well, he did some of his first stuff right out there with, you know, having people underwater holding their breath a long time, but doing a thing, like drinking a Coke or having an underwater picnic. Wikileaks is where he went and built an underwater theater with a big glass wall. A lot of y'all already know this. And then had the bright idea to put oxygen tubes down in there. And you get a bunch of very good swimmers who also had lots of long mermaid hair and put them in tails with flippers. You know, the flippers are at the bottom of the tail, but you never know because it just looks all floaty and they look fabulous. And then have them do shows, which makes perfect sense, right? Why didn't we all think of that? But Wikiwachi is also beautiful. Spring, the river's beautiful. Sometimes the mermaids are swimming with manatees and turtles. I think it is absolutely magical. It is magical. And it is, of course, I mean, it's a tiny bit tackier than this place. There's this sort of very weird, quasi-erotic mermaid statue, which you're kind of like, no, I don't know. But then it used to be one of the most famous places in Florida. Elvis went there. You know, movies were made there. And the park was failing a while back, so the state bought it. Thank God. One of the smarter things the state has done in the last 30 years is to make sure that didn't go away. It's part of our heritage, however bizarre it might be. But you know, we have mermaids. Very few people can say they have mermaids. We have mermaids. Yes?
When you wrote this book back in 2004, your intro was all about, and it was delightful, the 2000 election. If you were writing this book today, what do you think your intro might be about?
It might say, run away, run away. I think it would be completely so choked with profanity it wouldn't make any sense. I'm old enough to remember, I mean, I first started writing about the Florida legislature in the 1980s when I was a pup student. And this is the best thing I have ever seen to write about because these people are crazy and some of them are terrible. This was when the whole state was run by Democrats. Republicans were these people who were actually pretty reasonable back then. They had to sit on the back row in the House, and you know they sat there kind of looking bereft. But some of them were very fine, smart public servants, as were many of the Democrats. But then there were the crazy ones, and I thought this was bad. I mean, I remember being mad at Bob Graham. God, I would never be mad at Bob Graham now. You know, we were mad at anybody in power, which is the right impulse, really. You know, you should always take a dim view of people in power. But if I were to write it today, I would just lament the fact that language has become unmoored from meaning. Truth doesn't matter. Human relationships in our government don't matter, and elections are being not stolen, but being made unavailable to us. You know, it's very hard to steal an election, and mostly it never happens. Voter fraud, well, we don't have any. Oh, wait, except apparently Trump's former chief of staff's wife filled out two or three voter registration things. One tied to the house trailer in which they did not live. This is a felony. It's 2 felonies, actually. This crap is happening. Now we have an election Gestapo in Florida. You know, these guys are going to go around. Please God, let them be brown shirts, but I expect DeSantis has better sense than that. Doing what I don't know.
because there's no voter fraud. You know, it doesn't, statistically, it doesn't exist. I mean, you got 3 people in the villages who should be charged, literally 3 people in villages who should be charged with voter fraud. And then a couple of people in South Florida who were changing voter registration, party affiliation from Democrat to Republican. You may see a pattern in what I'm telling you. There haven't been any Democrats caught committing voter fraud. Because it's statistically that much, you know. But I'm prepared to want the people who are doing it prosecuted if this is important. If we're going to play like that, let's play like that. So I have been tempted not to write another whole book, but just write a book about, you know, once I calm down about it, which maybe never, about what's going on here and about how this state is a wholly owned corporate property which is aided and abetted in its sort of venality by a tame legislature, a judiciary that has been hollowed out, institutions that have been hollowed out, an environmental watchdog agency which never quite worked and really ain't working now, and a preference for development over everything. It's now, you know, we can now just decide that wetlands, it's not really a wetland, it's a park, or who knows. And y'all all know what wetlands do for us. Filter water, redirect storm water. You know, I have a friend in Fort Lauderdale that, you know, lives not on the beach. She lives in, you know, a place that regular humans can afford. There were a lot of wetlands around there that have been filled in, and they flood. They flood twice a month now. It's extraordinary how dumb this is. We're worrying again about the manatees. Well, manatees eat seagrasses. Why do the seagrasses go away? Because they get polluted. There's dredging, and we're going to replant some. It's like wetlands mitigation things. I commend to you a book by Craig Pittman about wetlands and how all this stuff does not work. Craig Pittman, I will also speak, he's my friend and he is a brilliant environmental writer, but every Thursday in the Florida Phoenix, Craig Pittman has a great column that will just make you feel sick. It's also, excuse me, it's also funny. That sounds like a contradiction, but he'll make you feel sick and you'll laugh because he's a funny writer. But you'll learn so much about Florida and what's being done to us, and in some ways what we're doing to ourselves. So, thank you, Marianne, for asking that question. I despair. Yes?
I have an online question.
Yes?
And it kind of dovetails into what you were just talking about. What would you say in a letter to Governor DeSantis, thank you, about his failings to protect Florida's environment?
What would I say to Governor DeSantis in a letter? Well, first I have to get all the swearing out of my system and then cut that part out. And then I would say, you are killing the goose that laid the golden egg, to use a cliche. Because what we have is our water, our natural environment. I mean, like I said, nobody goes like, man, they got awesome strip malls down there. I'm moving to Florida. Woo, I like the asphalt, don't you? We are destroying ourselves from within. And I would not imagine that it would do the least bit of good, because money and power always trump living things. But I would implore him to look around, you know, get out of his state plane. Go look at things that matter. Go look at the beautiful. You know, there was a time when we hoped that Jeb Bush tubing down the Itchitomi would make him not want to allow a concrete plant there. Didn't work. And I have a feeling that money and power always win. But, you know, we're sort of stuck in a system where money is what gets you elected. Not your bright ideas, not your virtue, not your intelligence, not any of that money gets you elected. But if we could somehow crowbar ourselves out of that system. But I would also tell him that we are ground zero for climate change. This is the thing that he said. He used to say things like this in the beginning of his administration, and he certainly said it in his campaign. You know, he made all these nice noises about how he knows that we need to do something about it. Now it's called sustainability. We don't talk about it as the climate crisis that it is. And, you know, I hate to be all Presbyterian about it, but, I mean, South Florida's doomed, y'all. It's doomed. And I'm hoping, best case scenario, I mean, I will really deeply regret the loss of the excellent food in Miami. But, you know, the Everglades will just do what it does and what it's always done. And that place has been, you know, under the sea, above the sea, under the sea, above the sea, its whole little life, its whole many millions of years of life. So it'll be fine. It'll be fine. The humans won't be fine. So maybe I'd point out that at the rate we're going, there'll be nobody left to vote for him. He's a youngish guy. He's what, 50? You know, he could, if he doesn't make it to the White House, he's going to keep trying for the White House till he does make it. If he doesn't make it the first go, you know, he might consider how many climate refugees are going to flee Florida. Because, you know, we may be growing now, but when you can't insure your house, like ever, because who's going to insure a house on the beach? That's stupid. No. Then things are going to change here, and maybe faster than everybody thinks. You know, I used to laugh because my father, who was a civil engineer, and, you know, civil engineers are obsessed with flooding. They think about flooding a lot. And I thought Daddy was just silly because he was so obsessed with flooding and built a house on what is high ground in Leon County. We're a big 200-something feet above sea level. Woo. And I just thought this was goofy. Now, I don't think it's goofy anymore. I really don't. When my house goes, we're all gone. Where's that Topsail Hill? Is that tallest?
Grand Ridge.
Grand Ridge, yes, beautiful Grand Ridge. Metropolitan Grand Ridge. If you have not, for a good time, drive on Highway 90 west sometime. It's full of many, many, many treasures. Is there a question? I can't see a paw. Yes?
What gives you hope?
Hope. What gives me hope? This is such a good question. That there are so many people fighting. In fact, accidentally you happen to be one of them and you're sitting next to another one. People who know what's what. In fact, this whole room is full of people. Where's Madeline? Madeline's here somewhere. Okay. Y'all all know Madeline Carr. People like Madeline and Madeline herself give me hope because she doesn't give up. Y'all don't give up. There are so many people that don't give up. There's the likes of Craig Pittman, who was going to write about this till he drops. This is his deal. There are people in this state who are fighting constantly. The Florida Wildlife Federation gives me hope. Earth Justice, which is a law firm, gives me hope. But mostly the people who can tell the stories. Tell the stories like Pittman, like Jeff Vandermeer, who is a terrific writer. I don't know if y'all
have come across his work, but he has written a beautiful essay on Wakulla Springs and how we're screwing it up. And I mean, there are all these people who are telling me we're shouting, we're doing our best to shout. And I persist in thinking that even if you just get to a few people, that's a few more people, and they tell a few more, and they tell a few more. But what gives me hope is the determination of people like you to not only spread the word, tell the stories, but like I said before, get out and vote. If you don't vote, I'm going to come to your house and yell at you. I really am. You just have to. Yes, Renee.
An online question, we go back and forth here. Any suggestions to deal with the local Wakulla Commission on the rezoning issue that they're currently facing with the gas station for protecting our spring?
Yeah, I figured that one would go away and then it would still be lurking. And it's lurking, isn't it? They never really go away. So, you know, I expect the bottling plant to come up. So what do you do with the Wakulla County Commission and the lurking threat of the world's largest gas station? I think you watch them. You watch them and watch them. If you catch them doing something, call up the Wakulla County News. If the Wakulla County News won't play ball, write a piece for the Tallahassee Democrat. They need copy. You look at some, seriously, I'm not just being mean, no, I'm slightly being mean. If you look at the Tallahassee Democrat, there's this young gentleman who belongs to an organization called, this is just the worst thing in the world to me, Grow Tallahassee. A pro-development, pro-chop it down and monetize it kind of organization. And he's in there all the time. And the reason he's in there all the time is that, you know, they got space. So never be afraid to do that. It can be a letter to the editor. It can be, I don't know what they call it now. They used to call it My View. But whatever it is, you can do that. I mean, if you ever read one of those Grow Tallahassee Boys things, you know that however you write, it will not be worse than that. I mean, I'm like, damn, son, did you have an English class? So, you make a noise, because if they think that it's all fine and that all you care about is money, and, you know, we all care about money, we have to, but for a lot of us, it's not the be-all and end-all. I mean, the idea of people like the governor is that everyone wants to be rich and they don't care how they get rich. And everyone wants a job where they get rich, as opposed to those of us who do a thing where you don't get rich, but you love it. These people like us are kind of weird to them, because they're like, what do you mean you don't want to just get super rich and build a Volcker house and Golden Eagle? I'm a snob, I'm sorry. But, you know, joy in the world is a thing that's alien to a lot of people. But for people like you all, it's not. And joy doesn't come from money. Joy comes from engaging with the world and caring about other people and caring about your environment. And because this is an exotic idea to some politicians, because you're not all about money and power, you can scare them if they feel there are enough of you, you know, and that you're going to raise a stink. And also, you know, find somebody to help you file suit, which is why I mentioned the Florida Wildlife Federation and Earth Justice, and there are many other organizations, because I like a nice lawsuit. And sometimes a lawsuit's the only way you get people to behave themselves in Florida. Quite seriously, you know, it sounds insane, but, you know, and the lawyers who do these suits, by the way, are not getting rich off them either. The people who do this work do it because they're on a mission. They want to help. Yes,
I have another question.
another question.
And we're gonna have to, for our online audience, we can stay here as long as we want, but just a couple more questions here. Have you considered running for political office?
Oh, yes, sorry.
And if so, where do you think you would fit best? Not that we're trying to recruit.
Have I considered running for political office? Absolutely not. I have a paper trail. I've been writing columns about Florida government since I was 22. And I promise you that the places I have written for, the sentiments I have expressed, and the time that I quoted in large part the first verse of the Internationale would do me in before I started. I also, I prefer, I'm a passive-aggressive character. I prefer standing on the sidelines as a citizen and, throwing spitballs, sniping. That's what I'm good at. I can probably give a speech. The only thing really political I ever considered was being a speechwriter, because that seemed like fun. On account of that was writing. That's writing. If you're a politician, you have to go and talk to a lot of people that are the opposite of interesting. And you have to be nice to them. And I run out of nice gas after about an hour. I'd be going like, you're not allowed to shut the house. It just wouldn't do. A lot of members of my family have done reasonably well in politics and in the law. My Granny Roberts, who was a Mackenzie from down here, was one of them too, but they were considered a late bunch of immigrants. They didn't show up till about 1850. Granny, who took a dim view of everything, said that the Robertses sat in the swamp until law school was invented, and then they commenced to college. Granny was not thrilled with this. Granny didn't like any of the political or lawyer cousins or judicial cousins. And so there are a lot of them that are good at this. And I am not one of them. I like what I do, which is rouse rebel. And write books that make me happy. And teach. I like teaching. Students are great, mostly great. You get the odd idiot. But they're great. And you can, all right, the governor's view of universities is that we are all we're all a bunch of Marxists turning our students into Marxists. We must be really crap at this. Because you will have noticed that over the past 20 years, there has not been a demand for Marxist candidates in Florida. The Marxist vote ain't real big. But that's not what we really do. We try to get them to think about their world. I will be satisfied with subverting their ideas of how, if they come in with certain ideas that I think are not really very good ideas, I work on them. Not by telling them what to think, but by presenting them with some evidence and letting them alone. And a lot of them will get it. That's what you go to college for. You don't go to college to learn a trade. You go to college to have your brain expanded, which is something that is very, very threatening to Florida government at this moment, which you can see in the way that they're trying to control universities. And we are not good at being controlled. We are an unruly mob of bookworms.
Do we have any other audience members live who'd like to ask a question or take one more? No?
You don't have to. There's no quiz.
No. Well, then I'll answer ask one more from online. Where do you see the next real big environmental issues developing here in the state of Florida?
Other than, everybody in South Florida needing to learn to swim, I don't think we have a next big, sorry, I should have repeated that question. The next big environmental issue in Florida, it's here. I don't know what the next one would be, except that it's going to get worse and worse and worse. If you like Key West, go now. Seriously, go to Key West now. Or if you like some of the other keys, there will be no way to save some of them. I'm kind of kidding about Key West. We might try to work really hard on that one, but there will be things disappearing. And maybe when things start to literally get underwater, we already have things that are underwater, but they aren't very inhabited yet. I remember when Alligator Point was a whole lot bigger than it is now. Alligator Point will probably disappear in my lifetime, and if not, that of the people quite, maybe 10 or 20 years younger than me. But we have the environmental issues now that are highly alarming. If you really want to scare yourself, read about ocean acidification. That is dreadful. The oceans can absorb the CO2. And if you really, really want to freak yourself out, because this matters to Florida too, it doesn't sound like it would, permafrost. I didn't even really understand what permafrost was, and I read this whole essay on how it's going. And it is a carbon sink. And when it stops being permafrost, all that carbon's coming our way. So yeah, I'm terrified. Absolutely terrified. Everyone should be not terrified to the point where you can't get out of bed and do something, but terrified to the point where, you realize that there's the fact that Publix doesn't have your favorite kind of toilet paper is not your biggest problem. Or even that $4 and something gas is not your biggest problem. In fact, the gas ought to be more expensive. That is like the most unpopular thing you can say, I know. But, I have a lot of friends in Europe and they're just like, what are you people bitching about? They pay much closer to what gas actually costs there. We're subsidized. So I think, I don't want to just go doom, we're all doomed, but you should have it at least in the back of your mind. We got a lot of problems, and nobody's going to solve them for us. Certainly not the people in power. Certainly not right now in Florida. Those people don't care.
They do care about our books and libraries.
They're very upset about books and libraries. Because what if your kid reads a book and becomes a communist? Which is also not how it works. This is frightening. We have anti-science, anti-rational people in our government. The Surgeon General, who shows you, I know a lot of really brilliant people that went to Harvard. I went to a fancy university. I can tell you that fancy universities have idiots too. And when this guy said he just didn't think children needed vaccines, I'm like, great, because polio is fun. Measles are fun. When science becomes this politicized, that's frightening. It is frightening. When you're told that what you're seeing isn't what you're seeing, that water's not rising. You're just sinking into the earth, see? You have to question everything. Question everything. Especially it comes from the powerful.
That's beautiful, Anne. Thank you.
I think that's quite enough for Roberts for one night.